So the question is, when do I start declaring war? And I think it's going to be sooner rather than later. Because yes, I want my movement bonus to last as long as possible, but at the same time, it's usually better not. It's just usually better just to get going. Because you wanna, as long as you have a strong enough military, you can start breaking down your opponent's army, pillaging their territory, even if you don't quite have enough strength to kill their cities yet. Or so yeah, I'm gonna wait for one more immortal, and we're gonna get going. In fact, his army is so weak that we might only need like one more immortal before we can take maybe a weak city. We'll see. So this one's 42 strength, which is fairly strong. Is that on a hill? No. I don't know why it's stronger than Pella, which is a larger population. I'm not quite sure how that works. Anyway, we'll see. If worse comes to worse, we can get catapults, which are the best way to take cities. Now, one thing I've never tested is battering rams. With Immortals. I'm actually going to try that right now. There we go. First thing you want in any coastal city is a granary, which I can actually buy. Kind of want to buy a trader though. So just build a granary. It'll take a while. This will grow once, and then it'll get a little more production. Not an immortal, I'm sorry. Granary. Oh, I'm so sorry for settling my land. Could actually sneak one in here. Thing is, these hills are going to be used by Tushpa here, so maybe not. So I really want what do I want? Mostly limes. But it's not too urgent. I mean, raid is kind of nice, I guess. None of this is particularly urgent. Colosseum is a fantastic wonder, so that might be worth pursuing. Anyway, let's get the show on the road. Hey, buddy. So you want to attack the... it's better to attack units that are on flat land, obviously, rather than this one, which is on a hill and in trees. So you can see, even though Immortals don't do a ton of damage, you can still shred a powerful swordsman. Or, I'm sorry, yeah, a swordsman. That's what it is. You can shred up a powerful swordsman with if you got enough of them. Alright, so the question then becomes, what next? And at this point in your teching, he's kind of a little more flexible. Once you get apprenticeship, which is really important, typically I like to go up the bottom because machinery is awesome because it lets you get crossbowmen, which normally is very important. Although since we're using Immortals, less so. But it also lets you get lumber mills, which is very important for boosting production in any city that is near a wonder. So we got a boost to defensive tactics, which, yes. Because one of Alexander's city-state allies declared war on us, Palin Q. I'm not sure if this is a glitch or whatever, but you can just declare peace right away. I mean, make peace right away. So it's kind of utterly pointless. There we go. 3 shots and he's gone. I think I'm going to take Battle Cry. It's pretty much what you take with any unit. Hannibal just needs to chill. Oh, look at this. This is quite good. So fun fact. If you actually find these travel huts in later eras, they give you better bonuses. Like the bonuses are stronger the later you pick them up. So actually you can do a funny strategy where if you have one, like say I had a tribal hut like here, no one's going to touch that. I can actually leave it there for a while. Let's get shooting. Oop, I don't want to put the general there. Although generals can actually die in 6, which is interesting. Oh no. I'm just going to go ahead and promote all these. So it's only a bit of chip damage, but the advantage, if you have, I mean, that's plenty of damage if you have enough Immortals. And the advantage of Immortals compared to regular archers is they're way more tanky. They can take punishment. They have 30 strength, melee strength, which is also the calculation used when they're taking ranged hits. It's a bit of a misnomer. So it says melee strength and ranged strength, but what that means is range strength should really be called like bombard strength, because like an archer or whatever, its bombard strength is 25, but when it's attacked, when it's either in a melee fight or it takes damage from an enemy ranged attack, it uses the melee strength. So we're just going to go ahead and it's good to just upgrade immediately in single player, because it's pretty easy to keep your units safe, and you really want them to get big and tanky and powerful. Now, what did I want here? More settlers, baby. I mean, it's just, you can't really go wrong. More settlers is more of everything. So, disappointingly, it was only faith, but it was 40 instead of 20. So if you get that in the early game, it's 20 faith. Now it's 40. And the best example, the best thing you can get is, in the early game, you find a tribal hut, and it gives you a tech boost or a civic boost. In a later era, it will actually give you multiple boosts. So at least two. You can get 2 boosts from a camp later, from a you know what I mean, tribal hut. This guy. So I think we'll settle even further down this river. 1, 2, 3, 4. Perhaps here? So at least we have these hills to work with. Alright. So normally you want a monument. I mean, you can put a theater square down or something, but which is what I say to do when, let me look here, when you're going for a culture victory. So here's the thing about monuments and culture in general. Typically, you don't ever want to build theater squares if you're not going for a culture victory. They're expensive, and they mostly are there to give you great works, which are completely useless to you if you're not going for a culture victory. Yet, yes, they give you culture. They give you culture. They give you culture, so I shouldn't say they're completely useless. But you get plenty of culture just from your monuments in all your cities. Plus, I'm sorry, so monuments in your cities is basically your sources of culture. Let me rephrase this. If you're not going for a culture victory, you get all the culture you're ever going to need from basically three sources. Your population, monuments, and most importantly, this card, meritocracy. Meritocracy gives you an enormous amount of culture. For districts, any kind of district, whether that's campus, commercial, industrial, whatever. You don't need, when you have meritocracy and monuments, you have plenty of culture. You don't need the theater squares, generally speaking. But the flip side of that is, if you are going for a culture victory, certainly you don't need to run meritocracy, but you also don't really need monuments. I actually typically would say don't bother with monuments if you're going for a culture victory and you're planning on building a theater square. With the exception of maybe your first expansion or later on, it takes some experience. Like, you have to balance the number of theater squares you're building when you're going for culture victory. It can be a little tricky. So sometimes, even if you're going for culture victory, you don't really want theater squares in all your cities. For the most part, you do, but that's something I would talk about if I was doing that. I'm not going to get too far into that right now. So it'd be nice to leave this up. Nothing I need here particularly. The next big things are feudalism and civil service, of course. And I'd really just like to get the boosts, so I'm just going to not really worry too much about what I'm teching. I mean, defensive tactics, yes. You know what? I think that's actually worth it. I'm going to rephrase that a little bit. Because getting limes is super nice. Even though I don't really need walls, because I'm building a big army and I'm invading, I really want this engineering boost. And it's worth it to me to delay it a little bit just to get the boost, because boosts are an enormous part of your progression through the game. Oh, sweet baby. That's a very weird quote, but I do love this wonder. Gives you 3 food, so you can work it right away, and it supplies your city with all the food it needs. Well, not all of it, I mean like a substantial amount. And of course the science is fantastic. Oh, look at that. More faith. Just what I needed. Can't wait for that national park. So funny it chose to attack my spearmen. So the reason I have a spearman is simple, because I need to take the city. So Immortals are melee class units. They can do everything. They can get melee promotions. They can get oligarchy bonus to melee units. They can even siege cities, as you can see. I'm sieging it with just Immortals. But the one thing they cannot do is take a city. They only have a bombard attack. So that's why I brought this spearman along, because he can take the cities, while the Immortals do everything else. I feel like that, though, that like flexibility of the Immortal is another advantage, because you don't need anything else. Like they cover, you can just put this policy in, crank as many units as you need. Maybe I'll stop building settlers. Why the hell would I do that? There's really no reason not to spam settlers in the early game. Selling would be nice. Because settler is the best long-term investment you can ever make in Civ. So every Civ, not just Civ 6. So I'm just gonna keep spamming them. I might stop building Immortals. I mean, he's not really fighting back, and I don't want to over-invest. You know what I mean? So I might just pause my Immortal production for now. You know, I can always swap it back in if I really need it. But yeah, I mean, don't overinvest in a military too, right? Like, I mean, this is enough to clearly take his cities. Why would I spend production on even more army? I mean, it's not bad, right? I could always use more units. You can use them to pillage. I can use them to kill barb camps. I can have them ready in case I get into another war. I could even, I mean, but ultimately, you know, you got to think about these things. So I'm going to stop after this Immortal, and I could continue later. So he's just walking in and out with this thing. I think this turn I will attack the city because what I want to do is break the walls so they can no longer shoot. What is this traitor? Where is he going? Oh, Granada. That was a bit of a mistake on my part. I didn't want to send him through hostile territory. So once you break the walls like this, it can no longer shoot. So even though I actually want to kill this thing, I wanted to break the walls down. Unfortunately, that wasn't quite the killing blow. It's alright. I'm going to take pot shots at the city and it should fall within a few turns. So I'm just going to have this guy heal up. So I have yet another Immortal, which I don't really need. Oh, I'm sorry, you can shoot. So what I'd like to do is swap in the policy and then send these two envoys. If you don't know what I'm referring to, it's called Diplomatic League. The first envoy you send to each city-state counts as two envoys. My impression is that, my guess is that a lot of people probably just ignore that and they spend them right away. But I personally think it's well worth it. It's well worth it mathematically if you're trying to maximize the total envoys, because it gives you double for your one envoy. And yes, you don't get the extra boost while this policy is in, but typically you only have Diplomatic League in for a few turns. And for it to not be worth it, you would have to leave Diplomatic League in for the entirety, the entire cycle of charismatic leader, or for I'm sorry, let me just put it this way. So I'm going quick speed right now, but this still applies to any speed. Plus 2 influence points per turn, right? So it takes 67 influence points, so about 33 turns for charismatic leader to fully grant you an extra envoy that you wouldn't have otherwise. So you would have to leave Diplomatic League in for 33 turns on quick speed for it to not give you a total value, for it to not be worth swapping in temporarily. And I'm going to swap it in for about, you know, maybe 5 turns, depending on what I do. So of course, it's well worth it if you're trying to maximize the total envoys. And I personally think you should try to maximize your total envoys. Even even if you're not, I think that's more important than going for suzerain, because I mean, it depends, right? Like I do like having actually no, I mean like Mohedo Daro would be nice to have suzerain, but none of the suzerain bonuses are necessarily god tier. Although Buenos Aires is kind of god tier. So it depends. You have to make the decision for yourself, depending on the situation of the game. But typically, the benefit of city-states isn't so much the suzerain, it's just the raw bonuses from having envoys. For example, the +2 envoys in every, +2 production in every encampment. Or even better is like +2 science. Or my personal favorite, +2 production for from the industrial zones. So late game, if you have like 15 cities and you have like 9 industrial zones, that is, and you have 6 envoys, That is 9 times 4 bonus production just from having the normal 6 envoys, which is totally doable. And then you can have that for like as many city-states as you can get for all your districts, and it's tremendously powerful. And it actually, that leads into basically like my opinion on an interesting like bit of strategy here when it comes to city-states is sometimes I think it's worth deciding what districts to build based on what city-states you have met. For example, and this is actually most relevant to industrial zones, because the fact of the matter is, an industrial zone is not worth building unless you have at least one city-state to industrial city-state, because the cost to build it is so high compared to the pathetic amount of production the base district gives you and the workshop gives you. So if you have no industrial districts and you don't have this +2 in per zone, it's actually not worth building, except you want to have one like factory that covers like, a factory that covers 5 cities is well worth building, and a power plant. But for the most part, you don't want to bother. However, if you have even just one, or oftentimes you'll have 2 or even 3 industrial city-states, you don't even have to be suzerain. You just need to put 6 envoys, which doesn't take that long, especially once you get to the mid-game and you do the quests and stuff. You have a tremendous amount of production coming out of your industrial zones because of the city-state bonuses. So that is really the power of city-states. And for example, if there's a bunch of science city-states, I can prioritize campuses more than I otherwise might, or commercial zones. This is especially if, for example, there's a bunch of industrial city-states and no commercial city-states. I'm going to be prioritizing my industrial zones much higher than my commercial zones when I'm deciding like which of those 2 I want to invest in. Anyway, that's very important to pay attention to. I think I'm going to try to queue up harbors. So at this point, I'm not really urgently trying to get anything, because I'm just going to get these walls as soon as that policy finishes, the limes. But otherwise, I'm not in too big a hurry. Let's take Ranger. So I might as well just get harbors ready, because harbors are pretty awesome to have on coastal cities. Ever since the spring update, when they actually made harbors like usable. Look at that scout rocket around with like 5 movement. I'm sorry. So when the swordsman attacked my Immortal, basically, it was fighting almost a full strength swordsman with oligarchy. So it wasn't like attacking an archer. Like a swordsman would normally shred up an archer or even a crossbowman. But this is the power of the unit. Oops, I meant to promote that guy. It was a bit of a mistake on my part. Oh, unfortunately he cannot see. So I want to bring this spearman in. I made a few mistakes here. Oh, I can just swap him back in. Because of all that movement. I sometimes mismanage my troops. Could you not do that while I'm talking, which is not a good habit of mine? I mean, typically speaking, I would say, in terms of my skill set when it comes to Civ, I'd say troop management is probably my weakest. It's funny. I mean, I'm pretty good at like economic management. I think is my strong suit. I'm not amazing at like managing my units compared to I don't know, maybe some other people. But that's okay. I've gotten a lot better, and I'm sure I will continue to do so. So I wanted to promote those guys, but I also really wanted to kill the city this turn, so I just waited to promote them. You know, Firaxis, if you happen to be watching, I think you should. I think the rate of promotion should be slowed down a little bit. It seems to come tremendously fast, even on normal speed. This is quick speed, and I do have oligarchy, but still, like, it's kind of obscenely fast. It like this immortal like has promoted twice in like 3 turns, I think, on quick speed. And I know the thing is like when you're playing multiplayer, online speed promotions are a big deal because that using those heals strategically is very very important. Even more so than the promotions themselves, because and so basically like having a heal a turn like makes it kind of absurd. Like frankly, the number of the amount of healing that goes on. I think I want a monument here too. Then it can start probably a commercial zone. I believe warriors upgrade into immortals. So one strategy that I haven't tried is like spamming warriors, which are much cheaper to build and they don't require any maintenance, and then upgrading them to immortals. I mean, that's definitely a possibility. I'm not really sure what the cost would work out to be, or you know, how that strategy might work, but that's definitely a really common strategy in Civ. Is like stockpiling gold so that you can rapidly promote. 1, 2, 3, 4. I really want the you know what, the Great Barrier Reef. So I'm gonna stick this guy down here. So these cities are kind of mediocre. Basically, their production is going to come from these lumber mills, these non-river lumber mills, which is pretty bad. So that's kind of a shame. But didn't I say I was going to stop producing immortals? Oh well. Spears. Could go education. Potala Palace. Anyway, we're done with the settlers for now, I think. Probably? Are we? Let me see. That's not what I said, is it? I said I would keep making them. And I think that I will. Yeah, I mean, yeah, for sure. 1, 2, 3, 4. So this might look weird, but... Oh, I wonder if this is a... This looks like it is not a mountain. Oh, wait a minute. Maybe it is. You can kind of tell, like, you see how this mountain is sort of jutting into the fog? So it might just be a mountain. But anyway, this is still a decent spot. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, these mountains aren't, like, workable. Actually, what I really should do is do this. That way I can get Mount Everest, or at least 2 tiles from Mount Everest. And I can stick a campus somewhere around here. Maybe the copper. Because I think it's worth harvesting the copper to get the +4 adjacency, which is pretty awesome. Then I can stick a commercial hub here or something. I think this place has plenty of hills. So even though I'm wasting a grassland hill, I think it's okay. Anyway. It's good to plot out your cities ahead of time. Obviously. But it's important for you to do that now so I know how many settlers I'm going to build. Now this is a bit messy. There's like one hill here, quarry, hills and stuff, but they're going to be used by this city. Perhaps I could put this here instead. And then I could, what I'm trying to figure out is I'm trying to get an aqueduct to connect to this mountain. Because there's no water here, and that's very bad. But once you have aqueduct tech, it's totally fine, in my opinion, to settle dry cities like this. Because I can build an aqueduct over here. Unfortunately, that uses up one of the only hills in the area. But I wanted to build it more towards the east here, so I could take advantage of some of this production. And so for that reason, I'm actually going to move this back over a little bit, because eventually it will be able to take advantage of like these hills, and it'll give more room for this city to use these hills here. Neither of these cities are going to be particularly amazing, but they're still worth settling. A mediocre city is still worth building in Civ 6, I should say, because you don't have any penalties for owning more cities, as long as you have enough amenities. But if you don't, it's fairly straightforward just to throw down entertainment complexes. So I'm going to stick this here, too. Maybe one here? I might skip this one, because this one, I could stick one here theoretically, but there's literally nothing. Unless I somehow got Petra here, which would be kind of sick, but 1, 2, 3, 4. But I believe Petra's been taken. I don't know. But I'm not going to bother with that for now. I'll talk about that in 1 second. But what I do... Actually, I'll talk about that now. So it's unrealistic for me to build a city there now and then build Petra. It's very unlikely. I'm not sure if Petra was already built. I wasn't paying attention. Maybe it wasn't. I think it was not. This would be an awesome Petra spot right here. And then I could build it right there. And then I could buy some tiles. Maybe I could kill Granada if I had to. But the thing is, like, it's unrealistic that I would build it now. But the thing that if you don't know, in Civ 6, if you raise a city that has a world wonder, you can rebuild that wonder. So I could actually if I can find Petra, which I hopefully will eventually, because I'm trying to do domination, which means I'm going to be sailing around and attacking people. If I find Petra, torch it, and raise it, and then I could actually build it here later, which would be pretty sick. So, but that's not my top priority right now. And because I'm sure Granada will expand, I might end up having to kill Granada. Maybe it's not worth it, but that's a bridge I'll cross when I get to it. But that is important to know if you didn't know already, that you can raise wonders and rebuild them. So all is not lost if you settle a Petra city and it ends up not working out. So I think in this case I'd actually like to settle a dry city. 1, 2, 3, 4. So right here, and then aqueduct over to this. That could be pretty cool. That way I take advantage of these nice hills and all that. And I stay relatively close to my other cities. Take advantage of this area. And maybe I could stick another one. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, why not? Cool. I think it's good to cram your cities in like this. Get as many as you can, as many of those districts. So I believe I sent one down here, and I guess I'm obligated to put one more, even though it's going to suck. One more city. Which I would really like to maximize the amount of lumber mills it can get. And it can access one hill, so. And I can put a harbor with a +1 bonus here. It's a shame I didn't get God of the Sea. as my pantheon. So actually, here's this sort of thing that I realized recently. Like, basically, if you see water, God of the Sea is the best pantheon you can get. Pretty much. Like, when you look at the list of pantheons, they're so mediocre. They're so mediocre. Chance of the Aurora sucks. Desert Folklore sucks. Fertility Rites pretty much sucks. Craftsman pretty much sucks. Healing has potential. Forge is like very, very situational. Which maybe I could have gotten out of this game. Open Sky is decent. But most of these pretty much suck. And are just not worth, most of them aren't worth getting. Most of the time. The thing is, like, situationally they can be quite strong. And actually situationally, God of the Sea is like super awesome. Because oftentimes you'll get like a whole bunch of sea resources. And a whole bunch of coastal cities. And getting God of the Sea is the difference between those being like mediocre cities and fantastic cities. And the thing is, yes, when I was picking my pantheon, I had this. All I had was my capital. Maybe I didn't even see water. Maybe I saw a little bit. But as long as like I know that sooner or later I'm gonna have multiple coastal cities, I know that I'm gonna take advantage of God of the Sea, which is the best pantheon. So honestly, in my recent games, I've just been picking God of the Sea, no matter where I am, even if I'm like in the middle of of a continent. As long as I know I can see some water and I know that I'll be expanding there sooner or later, I want to take advantage of the best pantheon in the game and deny it to my enemies. So that's something to keep your eye out for. All right, I say we march on over to Pella. Hell, you can take a shower right now. Let's name you the Iron Lambs. So, this is actually a tip. I think it's good to name your units. And the reason being, it's kind of like... That was a mistake. Stay there. The reason you should name your units is because in single player, a lot of your army management revolves around keeping your units alive. So basically, like, a unit is an investment. For example, my Immortal is whatever production. That is a sunk cost. So you want to maximize the value of every unit you build. The same way you want to maximize the value of your campus by putting it in the location you can. And most of that revolves around keeping your unit alive and promoting it. So you want as many promotions as you can get, and they become like very, very powerful units. And so like naming your units kind of like gives you this sort of sentimental, like psychological attachment to it in a way. Or at least I feel that way. And it's a little like corny, I know, or whatever, but like it kind of just helps you have that mentality that like this isn't some throwaway little minion. Like you really want to keep. I want to keep the Iron Lambs alive for like generations, because they are a fundamental part of my empire, and they are a sunk cost, and I want to keep them alive. I do consider that, a strategic, a strategic tip. So there you go. Anyway, that's it for now.